Rajni, what's wrong?
Tom, I have a script and I don't know what to do with it. Should I burn it? Feed it to my cat?
You need some writers group therapy.
Hello and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers. Are you ready for your session? The doctors are in. Well, it's that time of year.
It is? It's Christmas again?
Well,
No.
Although you will be spending money because it's festival season and contest season all year round and fellowship season. So this is the time of year when you scramble like mad to get your work in, and then you wait for about 8 months, and then you forget you entered that contest, and then maybe they contact you or maybe they don't. But yes.
I know you've been real busy working on some sitcoms and some other specs for some workshops or fellowships.
Yep, I've been polishing up a couple of my features. Actually, I've got another fellowship that I need to apply to this week, and then doing some spec scripts like mad. And I actually read a really interesting thing. This might be jumping ahead in the topic a little bit, but they said when you submit a spec script, always have another spec in pocket, because if they call you, they want to know that you have other ones. If you say no, they will automatically disqualify you.
Another script of the same show or a different show?
The article wasn't very clear. I think they just want to know that you're constantly working on stuff. So, this is for fellowships. Obviously, if you're writing a spec for a certain show, they're not going to be like, hey, we're two broke girls. And you're like, let me send you a spec for New Girl. And they're like, what? That wouldn't fly. But that's a completely different thing. So this is specifically for contests and fellowships. They just want to know that you're still working on specs and writing stuff.
Now, did you do a spec for an existing show, or were you writing a spec, like an original spec pilot?
For the one fellowship, which was the Nickelodeon one, they have a list of shows that they want you to write for. And they have 2 tracks. They have the general track and then they have the animated track. So you can pick something from those shows. And I picked a comedy with the hope that if there's any other fellowships coming up in the future, it's a current show, I can always just resubmit that script for the rest of this year. But there have been, like I just submitted to Sundance, they wanted an original. So it really just depends on the contest.
Yeah, I haven't done many festivals or fellowships or contests for writing lately. I've been too busy with our various short films, just getting those out into the world. But I did write a couple specs for Castle it's like 4 or 5 years ago when that was still on TV, and I had a lot of fun writing those. It was one of my favorite shows, but they really didn't do much for me. I guess they were decent writing samples. I didn't place in any of the workshops or festivals or contests that I submitted it to. And now this is kind of the downside of writing all these specs is, well, what do you do after the show is canceled? Now you've got to go write something different. So my script about the murder with the musical Saw will never be seen. But I think that's part of what it is you don't write a spec for that for a workshop or festival or a fellowship ever thinking it's actually going to get made, right?
Yeah, well, when you wrote those specs, though, was it just an exercise for yourself, or did you write them specifically for a contest or a fellowship?
I wrote them for Warner Brothers, for the Warner Brothers fellowship. Yeah, and they had a list of shows that were kind of acceptable. And it was always something about it had to be a show that was at least on the air for 2 seasons and was still on the air. That was kind of their rule for Warner Brothers. So, of course, if you write an episode, and we talked about this a little while ago about that's part of a serialized series that has an ongoing story, you're writing for a particular part or moment in time in the series, and that story is going to have a limited time span, a limited lifespan, because it's written to fit into a show somewhere. So the chances of it ever getting actually made by anybody are very, very slim. But it's supposed to show how you're able to adapt to the world and the characters and the flow and the structure of an existing show. So you're doing it for a reason, and that's to prove you can do it.
Mhm. It's actually really hard. I found writing a spec script was hard because not only did you really have to study the tone, study the characters, and especially like I picked Superstore. So there's like maybe what 4 or 5 main characters, and then there's a lot of side characters kind of floating around. And as it's gone on, I think they're in season 3, some of those side characters are now having storylines of their own. And so you're trying to be true to the voice of all those characters, come up with your A, B, and C story, and it's got to be current enough that when you submit that project, it's not something that they're like, oh, this could never happen because these characters are way beyond this point.
Right. Well, most of the festivals or fellowships I submitted to always said you could put a cover page on that said like previously on, so you could kind of set the location of the spec you wrote within the timeline of the series, so it made sense. And then I did try it when I was writing the castle specs. I did try to I don't want to say gloss over certain time-related aspects to try to genericize it. Like you could easily change a few scenes and put it somewhere else in the timeline if you needed to, if it got used. Because like the murder mystery could be done anytime. That's the procedural part of the show. But then there's the serialized part of the show that fits into where the characters are in that long arc of their story. So you have to kind of be flexible that way.
Yeah.
But was it worth it? I guess my big question is, has any of your entries into the festivals or fellowships been worth it?
Well, that's kind of a premature question because I'm just starting for this year. So,
okay.
A lot of the deadlines are early in the year, like January, February, March. And then I think the earliest fellowship I applied for, which is CAPE, which is a Asian Pacific American in entertainment, that one I believe starts sometime in the summer. So they should be announcing fairly soon, sometime in the spring when the who made it in there. But a lot of it is hurry up and wait because you don't even hear these deadlines until the submission window's open. They're like, oh yeah, the submission window is open now, and you're like, what? So with the fellowships and stuff, I think it would be worth it. I met a lovely gal. She actually came and spoke at our writers group, and she had done the Universal Writing Fellowship for a year, and she learned a lot. And she had done Project Involve previous to that. So I think if you get in them, they're useful as far as honing your skills, making contacts, things like that.
I've seen some emails recently from some people who I guess won or like were selected for some of the fellowships, and it's kind of a marketing thing for the fellowship. They're putting out what this fellowship meant to this person, what it did for them as far as their skills, their writing, their career, if they met people. So they're trying to show you how great it can be. But then again, they don't tell you about the 700 people who blew $50.
But there's a difference though too. I know exactly what emails you're talking about, and those are paid entries into what I feel kind of actually amounts to contests, even though they call them fellowships. Because a lot of the fellowships I've been applying to, I actually have a list from the Writers Guild that I'm working off of, and anybody can find this information off the Writers Guild. But they have a list of fellowships and contests that they don't necessarily champion, but they do say these are like the higher caliber ones. And a lot of them, Nickelodeon, you don't pay for. Universal, you don't pay for. You just submit. Whereas the ones that you're talking about, I've seen those emails too. Those ones you submit and you pay $100 or $150 or whatever. So I view those particular ones as more contests, even though they say fellowship.
Yeah, and some of those I think do take more people. Warner Brothers took I think a dozen people in their fellowship program, and I thought you had to pay for that one. Did you pay for Warner Brothers? Did you ever do that one?
Like I said, this is my first year submitting to anything, so the deadline probably hasn't come up yet.
Okay.
So I actually have a calendar that I keep of like what I did last fall. I got this list. I bought a calendar for next year, and I sat down and went to every website and noted all the deadlines and put them in my calendar. And if the deadlines weren't open yet, then I put a post-it note like, it kind of opens around March, so double check again in February. Just because, like I said, a lot of times I've noticed in years past, things will just pop up on Facebook where they're like, oh, apply to the late night writers program. Oh, apply to, NBC or apply to ABC. And you didn't even know it was coming. And they're already in the midst of the submission period and you're not prepared because you didn't know it was coming. So at least if I have a calendar that has an idea of like, okay, it usually opens around April, then I can start working on it now, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Now, for each of the contests, do you try to write something that you can use in multiple contests, I would imagine, or do you have to write for specific programs, like for Nickelodeon, you had to pick from their list, but did what you write for there, was that going to be usable anywhere else?
So far, I haven't seen any other uses for it, but again, it's kind of early on. So I think more deadlines are going to start open. It seems to me that a lot of the fellowship and diversity ones start in January. CAPE was in December. And then they kind of go through about April, May-ish. And then you actually, if you get the fellowship, you actually start it in the fall, like August or in the fall. So we're still kind of in early days as far as festival submissions, just because some of them haven't even announced that they're open yet. As far as the screenplay ones, I just had the 2 scripts that I've written as far as the rom-coms, which I even debate the wisdom of sending a rom-com out to a contest because it seems like they want heavy dramatic pieces, but I'm like, hey, I'm a comedy writer, so here we go. I am working on other pieces, but I would rather write something and take the time to polish it, even if it means I can't use it till next year, than rush through it now, even if it's a great idea, just to get it into a contest this year and have it be kind of,
Yeah. I actually did that with one of the Castle specs. I think I had a month to write a spec, and I think I wrote the first draft in a week, and then I polished it for another week and got it in just in time. So deadlines work great for me. So it actually was a helpful thing to not have that much advance notice.
I mean, I can write well under deadline, but at the same time, with some of these, I want feedback. So if I'm on deadline, I can't get feedback. Like with my Superstore spec script, I didn't have time to get feedback. I was in the submission window when I was writing it, and I didn't want to wait another week or 2 for feedback and not make the window. So yeah.
So what about you guys? Do you guys ever do contests or fellowships? What kind of stories do you have from your deadline writing screenplays? Let us know at WG Therapy on Twitter, or visit us on writersgrouptherapy.com. And if you like what you hear, subscribe and share it with your friends. Thanks for listening.